Hello, my name is Carly Cretney Peterson, and for this assignment, I was covering the Sunkist Library's Teen Zone space. The Sunkist Library is a small neighborhood branch that is part of the larger Anaheim Public Library system. The branch is shaped like a rectangle and is basically one big open room. The Teen Zone is a small dedicated teen space inside of the Sunkist Library. So the Teen Zone is located in the middle of the rectangle, opposite the service desk and between the adult and children's areas. The location largely makes sense. The zone itself is not really demarcated from the rest of the open room, and it's currently just kind of housed near teen collections, teen book collections. There is a planned update to the children's room to take place soon that will take some of the space from this section. So the first bookshelves have been emptied in preparation for the move, which I'll show in a moment. So this impacts the aesthetic and the understanding that it's a teen space, as previously this wall of manga you can see here on the right-hand side of the shelving, and it was flanked on the other shelving that you can kind of see peeking out right here with all the graphic novels, and that previously really visually drew teens into the space. The furnishings in the space vary. So it's a good feature of an effective teen space, as research shows that teens prefer a variety of seating options in their teen spaces. So here you can see a kind of larger table. Over here, seating options. You have these smaller tables which have chairs. This particular day they're doing a book sale event, so the tables were filled with books, but normally those would be empty and for people to use. So, sometimes teens are going to want to use these spaces collaboratively, like maybe on this modular movable couch. Sometimes they want to study alone or, prefer to read alone, or again, sometimes socializing is why they want to be there. So having a variety of furniture can help with this. In the section, again, there's this one high table, a few lower tables, and the tables, unfortunately, are not powered like in the adult area that have, charging stations or power directly into the table. So if teens want to charge their devices, they're not going to be able to conveniently do so at the tables inside of the teen zone. The section also has this convertible couch with movable segments. And the library assistant that found this, she's amazing. She found it on Craigslist and bought it for the library. And there are also these chairs that are supposed to be for teens, yet they are not currently in the teen area. So this one pictured on the right here, this kind of bulky chair. So years ago, when there was a renovation of this branch, I was lucky enough to pick out these large chairs that were made with young adults in mind, and they can withstand 4 people sitting on them at once. And they have different grooves, so you can lay down, sit up with your legs up, and other fun combinations. I thought by purchasing these sturdy chairs that library staff would stop being concerned about teens sharing a chair, when largely it wasn't about the sturdiness of the furniture they were worried about. And there's a spot at the bottom of the chair here too where you can shove your backpack and other bulky bags that were often cluttering up walkways in the library after school hours that led to conflicts with staff and other patrons. But unfortunately, the behavior that's normal for teens, to be physically close to one another and to share chairs, was still deemed problematic by management. So the chairs were moved out of the teen section and placed next to the information desk to help staff police the use of the chairs. So this is unfortunate. Again, they're made for teens. They're very popular with them too. So, not to jump ahead, but I would advise moving them back. So we'll get to that in a moment. The teen collection itself flanks the teen section on 2 sides. Here you have the new book collections, then the classic section, and then mangas at the end there where it says graphic novels, which is the part that should be on this adjoining bookcase here, but that bookcase is now empty. This is a close-up of that same wall. So you have the new book collections first, the classics there right after, small classic section, and then the mangas. Where you see the module furniture there, but you see these first shelves are empty. And that, I think, is, problem because those previously housed the graphic novels and the teen fiction books, and those have been shifted farther into the stacks. So as this one illustrates, moving a little bit farther down, starting with the mangas and panning over, we can see how these first two full shelves are just empty, which it's been like this for a couple months now. And everything was shifted farther into the stacks to make room ahead of the renovation of the kids' room. And this might deter youth interest and participation in the space, as they've sat empty for weeks before a date has even been set for the kids' room renovations, which can, again, deter the proper use of this space. So I would argue that they jumped the gun by emptying these shelves, as they're uninviting, and the collections were then shifted farther down, not visible from that space. The service point available for teens who would be using the teen zone is the information desk, which is located straight across the room from the teen zone. Both the teen zone and the information desk are in about the center of the rectangle on opposing sides of the building. If teens need help, they need to walk across the room and ask for assistance, and this may be a problem for some teens who may not feel comfortable approaching staff for help. So it's important that staff are trained in how to best work with teens so they can be supportive and mitigate any apprehension they might have about asking for help. Available technology in the teen zone is limited. There are few computers on the outskirts of the section that are now all ages and not specific to teen users. The library has a lot of technology, such as flat screen TVs, virtual reality sets, and a host of 3D printers that you can see, here behind the information desk. Yet, in the actual teen section, none of that technology is found. Technology in the teen zone has not changed in the 12 years I've been at this branch. So, I'll touch upon that with suggestions. So the question here of, do teens own the space? No. There are very few teens who ventured in post-pandemic to use the space, and many times the only people in the space are adults or older children. I think that without signage demonstrating age range and without staff enforcement of the space, this ceases to be truly for teens. Usage of the space is limited, and when teens are in the building, they may not even use the space at all. So those using the space are often alone or in pairs, and the taller table, here let me go back to where that image is, that's often used by pairs of students working collaboratively on projects, tends to be the most used furnishing in the space. When I took these photos, this was an after-school time period, so this space should be filled with teenagers, and there are none of them. So what were the designer's intentions with the space? I actually met the designer of this space. She was really nice, but it reminds me of the concept of the naive triangle that was discussed in the readings. Architects rarely know how the teens use library spaces, so it's difficult for them to design them for their use in mind. Librarians also might not understand how teens use the space or want to use the space, and of course they are not architects as well. And then teens themselves don't understand how library spaces are limited, and of course are also not architects. So no one really is on the same page when it comes to what the design should be often, which can lead to the creation of mediocre teen spaces. I think the designer's intentions were largely to segregate teens from the adult computers and the adult tables in the neighboring section of the library. Largely, those are the powered tables, and that is going to be what draws them in because they have devices they want to charge and use in those sections. So, briefly, some suggestions for improvement. The first would be to have a divided space so it feels dedicated to teen use. Not to segregate them from the use of other library spaces, but to show them that their participation is desired and their use of the space is encouraged. In a world where teens can rarely find public spaces they can inhabit and socialize in without paying for something, libraries are important places for teens to congregate. Another suggestion would be to put up signage to indicate the spaces for 13 to 18-year-olds. So here in this photo that I pulled from Yelp, from the reopening pre-pandemic, you can see that the teen chairs are actually in the teen area, right? This is kind of the line of where that area ended. You can see there's a little sign on the table that says Teen Zone, again trying to indicate who should be using that space. This is something that has fallen out of fashion at the branch, and I think the dedicated signage could better communicate the intentions of the space and that the desired users of the space are 13 to 18 years old. The biggest suggestion for me would be to move the large chairs back to the teen zone, as these chairs are still very popular and overwhelmingly used by teens. Not children or adults so much, so moving them to the section could be a good way to lure the teens back to that space, and it would help with the overall aesthetic of that area. Another suggestion that came from the research for this movement's readings was to add stations with opportunities for engagement. So many of the readings touched upon the need for teens to have ownership of the space and to see themselves reflected. And there are a few simple things that Sunkist could do to make this happen. First, 3D printing is very popular at the branch, and there's multiple programs a month focused on 3D printing design. Because the branch has so many printers, it would be helpful to have a small printer dedicated to the teen space. It could be connected to a laptop with the printing programs on it, and this would offer more youth the opportunity to learn and adapt the technology without having to sign up for librarian-led workshops that might just not be, work within their schedules. So teens can then design what they want and watch it print. And there could be a dedicated area for prints to live until teens pick them up, which would show other users of the space that their participation is encouraged. Another way the space could be improved is to add a sort of art cart, or basically an area that has supplies and materials for teens to express themselves artistically. Further, having a space for teen art to be then displayed will again make the teen space better reflect the interests and identities of those who use it. And this same kind of place to display things could then also be used for interactive passive programming. Like let's say, for instance, in April, we'll often do a teen poetry contest. We can post the poetry contest entries or winners up on the walls so other teens can see this, or other interactive ways where teens can then see that they are the ones who own that space. Another major suggestion would be to purchase more tables or divide up more of the tables from the adult area to put in the teen area that have powered cords directly in them. This means that so many teens often move to the adult area so that they can plug in their laptop while they work, or plug in their phone or whatever other device that they're bringing with them. And having that kind of access to charging stations and powered tables in the area would then lure teens back into that area and away from the adult space, so that there's not kind of a conflict in who's using those spaces. And then lastly, my suggestion was to have some sort of staff professional development to better serve the needs and interests of teenagers that are using the space. So pre-pandemic, you can see in this picture, there's a lot of use of the space. While post-pandemic, or where we are now, if I go back to these pictures of the teen zone itself, it's empty. And so, maybe having opportunities for staff to learn what are the best practices to work with teens, to make sure that they feel welcome and invited into the space. And then, of course, adjusting the specific improvements to the space that I've kind of reviewed in this audio might then help improve, the usage of this space. Here I have a picture from the other day, used with permission of the child in the photo, that shows the kind of fugitive postures that are often on display with these chairs, which became part of the reason why they were moved next to the information desk. And I feel like this is just a failure of staff to understand the normative behaviors of teenagers, and just to understand that this is what the furniture is actually made for, right? It's expected that they would kind of crawl all over it, climb all over it, and that the furniture is made to withstand that. So, having better understanding about what is normative for teens can then help staff have better reaction to teen behavior. So overall, there are some things that Sunkist Library is doing well in its teen zone to promote the usage of the space or provide, variable furniture that can be moved, things of this nature. But there are some ways in which they could improve, and then hopefully that could facilitate more engagement with the space by teenagers.